and welcome to the What to Read Next podcast. In this podcast, your host, Gloria Me, will invite a bookish guest to share their favorite book recommendation. If you share a passion for books and always looking for your next read, then join us. Hi, Amy. Welcome to What to Next podcast.
Hi, Laura. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So excited to have you here. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So obviously I'm Amy. I run Word and Kisses, which is it's an online romance bookshop in the UK. I live in Leeds, which is in Yorkshire, for anyone who's familiar with that part of the world. And I live with my husband and my son, who's 3, and our very grumpy cat called Tuna Fay. And by day I'm a digital marketer, and by night I'm a bookshop owner.
What inspired you to start your bookshop? Which I love the merchandise. I'm like total envy for it.
Oh, thank you. That's so kind. So it was really just being a bit jealous of you guys over in the States having way more options for romance than we do in the UK. I think in the UK, from my experience anyway, like women's fiction and romance is a lot more there's a lot more of a crossover, so we don't get quite so much of a focus on it. I don't think we have Mills and Boon. I don't know how much you're aware of that, like Harlequin, and so I think that kind of dominates the sort of romance space in the UK. And when I started really getting into romance, probably about 5 years ago, I found loads of romance podcasts and Facebook groups and stuff, and there seemed to be so much more going on with subscription services. And obviously you guys have the Rip Bodice and Love Sweet Arrow, and conferences and stuff. And so basically it was just jealousy. And my husband will tell you I never have an idea that I don't then act on. So he's very long suffering with my schemes, but this is sort of the best one yet. Just creating something that I wanted to have, and found some other people wanted as well, so it's worked out quite nicely.
I love this. I love what you're offering, and you have some great offerings. You have some Sally Hibbert, some Eve Brown.
Well, she's local, relatively local to me. Compared to the States, it's basically next door. But so she's obviously a UK author. But
I love this. And so, when did you start reading romance? You mentioned it 5 years ago. You started reading romance?
Just about then. So like I say, women's fiction a lot kind of bigger in the UK, and when I was a teen, loved all that stuff. So Bridget Jones. This is aging me really specifically.
It was the same way. So I think we're both in the same wavelength. I read Jane Green, Bridget Jones, Jennifer Weiner,
yes, all that stuff. I used to love a British author called Freya North. I don't know if she's still writing. I did try to reread it, but it's very naughties, and that's not a criticism. That's just times moved on. And Belinda Jones was my other favourite. But so when I was a teen, I used to read voraciously as much as I could get my hands on, and then it's kind of that age-old story, which I'm sure a lot of people will be familiar with. That you go to, you love reading, you love books, you go to university to study English and to read, and then fall completely out of love with it. Because you have to read so much, 4 books a week or whatever, and it's all old white guys. I don't think I loved 80% of the books that were kind of on the syllabus. Some exceptions, sort of your Brontes and your Austens and stuff like that. So just kind of stopped reading as much. Realised I stopped reading as much, and I used to love it, and actually got a Kindle through work. So in 2015, I set myself a challenge to read 100 books in a year, which for romance readers, they're whatever, that's nothing. But for your average person on the street, at the time, it felt like quite a lot. And basically, it just changed my life. So I started reading kind of what I already had, that people had bought me, and then just sort of stuff I'd heard of, stuff like The Hunger Games, which I hadn't picked up before. Read it all in 2 days. Do not recommend. Had some very horrific nightmares from that dystopian mess. But as a result, obviously, was looking for more books, and ended up finding the Book Riot podcasts and Book Riot as a general thing. And they were very complimentary, as they should be, about Sarah MacLean. And so I was like, well, they keep talking about this Sarah MacLean, so I'm going to give it a try. So I picked up A Rogue by Any Other Name. Have you read it?
No, I have not read it.
No. Okay, well, I won't spoil what happens, but because this happens very early on, so it's not a spoiler. But in about chapter 2 or 3, the hero is going down on the heroin, and obviously it's a lot more graphic than a lot of other stuff that I've read. And I was just like, oh my god, you can do this in books. You can just write about this in books. What? This is wild. Why did nobody tell me? And just really, I felt like I was whacked over the head with it. And then obviously read the rest of that series, and kind of then was just in like picking up other stuff like Courtney Milan and that they'd recommended, and then onto contemporary, and kind of their, you know, basically was hooked ever since. And I'm still a big Sarah MacLean fan as well. And yeah, it just was, it was like, oh, you can read about things that are fun. You don't have to read these like old white guys who are just like talking about how that, like, all the books I feel like I read, all the authors I read in like contemporary books at uni were all like men who were English professors who wanted to sleep with their female students, and that was like always the plot of the books. I'm like, I don't like those things. I like these things where it's like everyone's like feminist and happy, and there's a happy ending, and you know what you're gonna get, and obviously the smart is great, all of that stuff. So yeah, it just was, yeah, it just kind of went from there, really.
Love this so much. Yeah, I started reading romance in 2016, so
Yeah,
it was like by chance. I read. I was struggling with finding what to read next. Like I was like, I don't know what book recommendations, and someone told me about
the podcast.
Yeah, and so someone told me about BookTube, YouTube, and so that's where I ended up just like getting recommendations. They like one video after the other. I was like, oh, let me hear about new adult, and so for new adult, I just jump into romance as a genre, and I was like, oh my gosh. So
and that was like that was a real time for new adult, wasn't it? Like that sort of,
yeah.
It kind of feels like it's dropped off. I know it's kind of, you know, things come and go, but new adult was quite big around like 5 years ago, wasn't it? Like Elle Kennedy and that sort of thing.
So I love this. So we're going to talk about Cinnamon Roll Heroes. So talk to us all about it. So what do you love about this type of hero? What is this type of hero? Let's define the hero first. And then what does you love about it?
I was struggling because I was like, I'm going to have like the definition of Cinnamon Rolls heroes for this. But from like my understanding of it, it's just kind of heroes that are, you know, very sweet, very supportive, very kind, very gentle, just really breaking down that like toxic masculinity thing. You know, I think the like official is like say like a gooey center, like a cinnamon roll. And I was saying earlier before we recorded that I should have bought myself some cinnamon rolls, because now I'm going to really want to have some. But yeah, I think it's something I get a lot of requests for when I ask people like, oh, what kind of books do you want to see? Like, what recommendations do you want? And, you know, a lot of people say, oh, I want cinnamon roll heroes. And I don't know whether it's just like the pandemic and like general 2021 vibes, but people just kind of want this like comforting, safe story. And I feel like that's where the cinnamon roll really shines. I mean, I think it's a different engagement with toxic masculinity to like an alpha hero, which, don't get me wrong, also love an alpha. But with that, it's kind of, they are quite, toxic's maybe not the right word, but at the beginning of the story, you break them down. And then obviously by the end, they've realized they've got feelings, and they're being all romantic, and it's lovely. Whereas I feel like your cinnamon roll hero knows from the beginning what feelings are. You don't have to teach him about them. And, you know, he's kind of got that more caring, I say it could be a woman, but I feel like traditionally it is a male romance hero trait. I think probably it's displaying a lot of the traits that we would just assume women have, which is probably a bigger conversation for another day. Just like really get into gender roles. But yeah, I just think it's a feel good trope in romance that I think a lot of people are really looking for at the moment.
I love this. Yeah, I have a thing for cinnamon roll heroes. Like, I'm like, that's what I wanted in a relationship. Like, you know, like I'm okay reading some alpha holes and some alpha heroes, and I'm okay with just seeing the process of it. But the reality is, like, if I want to have a relationship with, I'm probably gonna go for a cinnamon roll hero.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the cinnamon roll hero is the person you actually want to marry in real life.
Yeah.
Your alphas you can read about, and it's like, oh yeah, that's really sexy. But I feel like probably in real life you'd be like, oh my god, will you please just stop growling at everybody? Like, we're just going for dinner with my parents. Like, it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about recommendations. So what books would feature a cinnamon roll hero?
Yeah, so I feel like you can't talk about Cinnamon Roll Heroes without talking about Rafe by Rebecca Witherspoon. You're the buff male nanny, which is just the greatest like tagline of a book. She knows what she's doing. She knows who her audience are there. But for those who obviously don't know, I mean, buff male nanny says it all. Sloane is the sort of heroine. She's a brain surgeon. She's a surgeon of some kind. I think it's brain surgeon. But either way, you know, top of her game. Her nanny quits at the last minute, leaving her in a bit of a bind. She's divorced, and she doesn't have, and she's moved across the country, so she doesn't have like local childcare options. So she ends up hiring Rafe, who's a male nanny. And obviously it turns out he's really sweet, he's really caring with the kids, he's lovely with them. Like there's bits where he's like doing their hair and things. They're like, she has twins and they're like 7 or 8ish, I want to say, maybe younger than that. But yeah, I just feel like it's subverting a lot of the stereotypes of kind of, because he's got tattoos, he drives a motorbike, he's big, he's got a beard. It's kind of maybe not what you expect, that he's then going around and like playing games with little kids and stuff. He's really supportive of her career as well, which, your classic cinnamon roll kind of vibes. And I just think we'd all really love someone who does all of the domestic labor. You can just go to work, you don't have to worry, your house is going to be clean when you get home, the cooking's been done, the kids are taken care of, they're safe, they're happy. Like, that is the dream. That's the dream. So I think he's got to be up there. And obviously you mentioned Talia Hibbert earlier, and my love of Talia Hibbert is well documented. And like I said, she's a UK author who I think is doing like some of the best work. And I think she also has almost all of her heroes are kind of cinnamon rolly, which I think is part of her appeal, is that she has these soft, sweet books that feel safe and cozy. But the one I sort of made a note of was Zaf from Take a Hint, Danny Brown. Because he's, so again, for people who don't know the story, he's the security guard at the university where our hero Danny Brown works, and there's a fire drill and he ends up carrying her out the building. It's a social media viral moment, and then they end up being in this kind of fake relationship / friends with benefits relationship as well. Obviously love ensues, as it does in a romance novel, but I just think he's, again, that kind of breaking down toxic masculinity. That's one of his main things, is he wants to create this charity that helps men with their mental health problems around sport, particularly because he's an ex-rugby player, which is, you love to see it, you love to see that kind of thing. He makes sure she eats, he gives her breakfast bars every day to make sure she's eating, really supportive of her academic career as well. He's a little bit more of a grumpy cinnamon roll, so I think you've got your different flavors of cinnamon rolls. He's kind of a bit gruffer, but generally speaking, just a sweetheart.
And he reads romance.
He does read romance. How could I not mention that? Yes, a perfect hero in every way. We love that. I think it's quite close with his family as well. I think is another good cinnamon roll trait. And then I had the Kiss Quotient. I feel like everyone probably at this point has read the Kiss Quotient, but I feel like you can't not mention Michael in talking about cinnamon rolls, because again, I feel like it's subverting that trope. He's a male escort, really hot, good at sex, obviously, because that's his job. And again, you kind of have an idea of what that kind of person might be, but actually the way he treats Stella, who's the heroine even, she has Asperger's, she has some really specific needs around how she likes to be touched, and she's a little bit nervous around it. And he's just so gentle and caring with her, and obviously that translates to their longer term relationship. And also, again, lovely family situation, really cares about his mom in particular. So yeah, love him. He's one of my faves. And another one that I've just discovered, I don't know if you've ever read any Rowan Parrish before. 10 out of 10 would recommend. It's a new one to me as well. It's a male romance, this one, and the two I've read, it's a Garnet Run series. They're both just so soft and sweet and tender and just lovely. But the most recent is Best Laid Plans, and one of the heroes, Charlie, is just such a sweet cinnamon roll. His parents died when he was 18. He's been taking care of his little brother, took over the family business, and just has always been stepping up to that responsibility plate. But he's just really caring. He wants everyone to have, that kind of safety and security. And he helps the other hero, Rye, to build a house and just kind of really find that sense of home. And I just think it's really lovely. And they both have cats, and the cats become friends as well. So it just becomes this all of I know it's really cute. And I think that's part of it as well. Again, it's that subverting things of men with cats. It's not you get quite a lot of dogs as a and that's kind of, I guess, what you would expect, but cats just somehow feel a little bit kind of squishier and softer, especially if you've got, they can be a bit, like I said, I have a very grouchy cat. She doesn't like me, but she does love my husband, so maybe that's just my slight bias about men with cats. And then my last one I have for you was The Intimacy Experiment by Rosie Dannon, which is out in 2 weeks, and because I'm a a bit jammy. I have read an advanced copy of it, and I felt like the hero of that is just your perfect cinnamon roll. So Ethan, he's a hot rabbi. He's taken over this synagogue that is really struggling, and he's just really lovely. He like cares about all of the people. I don't know whether in synagogue it's congregation still. This is me showing my ignorance here.
I don't know. I think it's congregation. I think so.
Yeah, I thought it was still congregation. I'm sure it says flock at one point as well, which I think is maybe it's just like a more generic word. But anyway, so the people who go to the synagogue, like they're like older, kind of they're trying to attract like a younger audience to the synagogue. But he's like friends with all the old guys, and they're all in this like softball league together. And I just think what's brilliant about the intimacy experiment. So the heroine is a sex worker, so she's an ex-porn star, but she still works like porn adjacent in a startup that's around like sexual pleasure and like teaching people about sexual pleasure. And the way he defends her and the way he like respects what she does and her knowledge and stuff just feels super cinnamon rolly to me. Like I just think he's really, really sweet, and he really wants her to succeed. He kind of puts things in place to help her succeed, which I think is very cinnamon rolly. And just kind of very more emotionally astute, I think, than your kind of more alpha-y heroes. Just kind of like, oh, they know what feelings are and they know when they are experiencing them, which doesn't seem to be the case for, most, some of your romance heroes. So yeah, those are my sort of recommendations off the bat. But I feel like you could probably go on forever with cinnamon rolls. I don't know if you have any faves.
I know. So I have to recommend one book that's coming out in June, and it's Neon Gods by Katie Roberts. So it's Hades and Persephone. And so the best part is Persephone tells Hades, like, you're ooey gooey on the inside. Like she basically explains to Hades that he's a cinnamon roll. Like
I love Katie Roberts. I think she's absolutely brilliant. And I love that, again, it's all about subverting like the Hades Persephone myth. Hades is traditionally not a cinnamon roll figure. Your Disney's Hercules, he's not got that vibe. But yeah, I love that.
So I love this. So what is your favorite trope?
I struggle, you sent me a little prompts for this before this call. I was really struggling to think of one because I love them all. I want them all.
I know, me too.
Just give me them all piled on top of each other. All the tropes just squished into one book is really like my dream situation. But I chose like a forced proximity, only one bed situation, because every time it comes up, it's not always a whole book, but just like every time it comes up in a book, I'm like, oh, yes, love that. You can see it coming. You're like, there's only gonna be one bed. What are we gonna do? So yeah, I think that's there's so many ways it could go. Do they end up sleeping together? Does he take the floor? Or, one of them take the floor so the other one can sleep? Like, do they, talking in their sleep and they reveal something? There's just so much potential.
Or they end up cuddling. You never know. Or they end up just like getting it on. And it's like,
yeah, well, that's obviously the dream situation, obviously.
I love this. What are you currently reading?
What am I currently reading? So funnily enough, I'm actually halfway through Neon Gods. I haven't got to that bit yet with Katie Roberts, and I'm also reading You Love Me by Carolyn Kepnes, which is not a romance. It's the new You book. Don't read that if you want like a happy ending. It's not that vibe. But yes, I'm halfway through Neon Gods, which I am really enjoying because I just love a Katie Roberts book. She's the one with all the tropes, like you're ticking all those boxes. And I am also reading Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert. So again, we're kind of circling back around to that. I've only got a little way to go, so I'm just in the like dark night of the soul bit, like crisis has happened, but it's fine because they're all going to end up together. It's going to be all right. But it's brilliant. It is brilliant. I think it's the best of the series. I don't know if you've read it. Yeah,
it is the best of the series. Like, it just gets
and they're all good. They're all good. Like, that's no shade to the other two at all, because but it's just like the banter is just so sparkly and just brilliant.
Yes, it is. So tell us where we can find you online.
Where you can find me, so my bookshop can be found at wordsandkisses.com, nice and easy. And then I'm on Instagram at Words and Kisses Club, which is probably where I hang out the most because I love Instagram. And on Twitter, I couldn't get that because there's too many characters for Twitter and they're awkward. So it's words_kisses on Twitter as well.
I love this. Thank you, Amy, for being on the show.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this podcast, feel free to share with friends, subscribe, rate, and review the show. This is the easiest way to support the podcast. For book recommendations, author interview archives, and other fun book resources and tips, please visit WatchReNextBlog.com. The Watch Read Next podcast is part of the Frolic Network. To discover new shows to listen and love, please visit frolic.media/podcast. Thank you so much for listening and have a great day.